Hi folks, it's Andy and welcome to today's Kendo rant. I've left it a bit later than usual today, so it's a bit dark in here because it's gone dark outside already. But anyway, I hope you can see me all right. Let's get straight into the questions. I do have this one came to me by email actually, and I do think it's a great question and I definitely want to cover it, so that's why I've put it in here. So it says, I have a quick observation about making the strikes at the same time as performing for Mikomi, and was wondering if you had noticed that many of the Kendo-related photos rarely show the shinai and the right foot striking simultaneously. In fact, the right foot is still pretty high off the ground when the shinai is clearly striking the target already. This is usually more apparent with the men's strikes. Like I said, it's just an observation and wanted to hear your thoughts. Okay, so that's a fantastic point, okay? Absolutely fantastic point. I'm really glad that's come up. Okay, so this has come up because I think I talked about it maybe yesterday or the day before. I know I've been talking about it a lot recently. I'm sure it was in these videos. It might have been at the dojo though, but I'm always talking about how important it is to stamp and hit at the same time as well as shout at the same time in order for you to have Kikentai no Ichi. So yes, that is important, okay? It is, but what the problem is like with the advent of photography and these sort of high speed, high shutter speed photographs that freeze the action to like literally a fraction of a second. Like nobody's so perfect that it's gonna happen at the exact same time. In fact, it shouldn't really happen at the same time. And it's always best at the beginning levels to look at it as stamp and hit together, stamp, hit, shout together, stamp, hit, shout together. But actually at more advanced levels, it actually works a little bit differently. And one of my teachers in Japan, he actually used to say, move your feet first. So your right foot moves first, starts the motion first, but the shinai lands first. Is what he used to say. Now, I don't want to go into that because I definitely don't want you to think about that, all right? Think about stamping and hitting at the same time, all right? But yes, if you freeze frame some of these top guys, the shinai hits slightly, literally a split second, usually before the foot hits the ground. That's okay because it's roughly the same time, all right? It doesn't have to be the exact same split second. It depends how far you want to kind of split the hairs really, but if it's within the same kind of moment, then generally it's okay. But there is a clear difference when somebody's hitting and then stamping, and that is out of sync. So these guys, although the shinai is hitting first, and then the foot is hitting a very split fraction of a second afterwards, which is captured in most photographs because people are trying to capture the moment of the actual impact. But actually, you know, if you take it like a series of shots, but most Kendo conditions don't allow for this to happen. You'd actually, without getting too technical, I actually was a photographer before I was like a bored person, but because Kendo always happens in a dark place, like inside a dojo, even with lights on and stuff, to properly freeze something really, really sharp, really you need to be using like a burst of flash, and then that we don't do that in, you know, like obviously you see like professional soccer or football or something like that, you see the guys with the big lenses and they're taking the pictures of the magazines and papers. Often they're firing the flashes very quickly, but we're not generally allowed to do that either at the Kendo tournaments. But if you took a series of really fast, or even if you took a video, a very high quality video, and you slowed it down, often what you'll find, now not always, what you would find is that the shinai hits first, then it bends like this. I'm bending it on my head, but it kind of bends like this, right? But much more extreme because I'm not quite strong enough to bend a small shinai like this, but it'll bend like this on the head, bends like this, and then it kind of starts to revert like this and it kind of makes an S shape, okay? And then it kind of comes off a bit like that, it kind of reflexes back. This hits first, then the foot hits. And at that moment, actually, for the most part, they're connecting at the same time. Yeah, it's just that this happens to land a split second before the foot. So yeah, it's normal for that to happen, and it's kind of, it happens. It's sort of supposed to happen that way. But don't think about it like that. Think about hitting and stamping together. Because when you watch it in live speed, live action, it looks like it's happening at the same time. Because what you're talking about now is splitting. Like I say, we're talking about splitting fractions of a second. Okay? I hope that makes sense. I've gone into a bit more detail on that than I probably should have. But I think you get the point. Yeah, but the most important thing is, don't think about that. Don't think about hitting with the shinai first. Think about hitting and stamping together. Okay? Next one. This is a comment on last video. I really want to start Kendo and have for a long time, but I'm having a hard time finding cheap set of Borger that I can afford. Please could you tell me what is the minimum amount I could spend on a Borger? Also, is second-hand Borger a good idea? If it is, are there good websites for second-hand Borger? Okay, so first off, people have replied to this comment on YouTube already, and pretty much everyone has said exactly the same I'm going to say, which is don't go and buy a Borger. You do not need a Borger to start Kendo, all right? You do not need the armor to start Kendo. You will not need it for quite a while, till after you start. So here's what I recommend you do. You find yourself a dojo, you find yourself a club, you get down there, you give it a try, yeah? And then sign up. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. I really hope you do. It is a wonderful, wonderful art that has so many benefits, but does require a lot of patience. You have to do it barefoot, you have to shout, so be ready for that. But it's worth it, and it does give you a lot of things back. So definitely I encourage you to do that. Get to a dojo, give it a try. I do hope you love it. And then what's going to happen is probably it's going to be like a few months. Actually, the beginners at my club, most of them are not even looking at wearing the Borger until they've been with me for at least 4 to 6 months. Yeah, so let's say you've got 6 months, all right? So let's say you're not going to wear Borger for the first 6 months. You don't have to, right? Nobody's going to push you. Nobody should be pushing you into wearing the Borger in the first 6 months. And if they are, then, you know, I'm sure they'll have some that you can borrow if they're that keen for you to wear it. Use that 6 months to save your money to buy one for when you need to. Okay, I don't recommend you getting a second-hand one. Obviously, I would say that I would say that as I run a kendo shop, but to be honest, you might get it for like, I don't know where you're based, but like a couple of $100 or a couple £100 or euros, wherever you are. But you're kind of throwing money away. And the same goes for just buying the cheapest Borger that you possibly can find on the internet. And I kind of say this a lot. You know, the sets of Borger out there like brand new for like $300 or something, I think, these days. But as I've said before on here, personally, I think that they're total junk, and I think they're a waste of your money, because what you want to do is you want to be able to spend sort of $400 or $500, or it's around like £400. If you can sort of part with that amount of cash. I know it's a lot of money, especially if you're sort of young or a student or whatever. But if you can save yourself up that amount of money, do everything you can to get that together, you'll definitely I think you'll appreciate it, because you'll get a better quality set of Borger that protects you better. It's going to be more comfortable. It's going to look better. And it's going to be all around better quality, so you're going to be investing the money better. You could go and spend, like, say, $300, which is like, what, 250 euros or something, on something, you know. But I'm telling you, after 6 months or a year, you're going to want a new one, especially when you start, maybe longer, maybe 2 years. Yeah, but when you start looking at going for the Dan grades, the first Dan, the second Dan, you're not going to be wanting to wear that cheap beginner's Borger at those grading exams. I made the same mistake myself when I first started out. I didn't know what Borger I should get. I didn't know what the best thing to do was. I made the different mistake that lots of people made, and I went for like the closest stitch width. I was under the impression that the closest stitch width, like a 3mm or 2mm, I think mine was 2.5mm or something, stitching was better than a wider stitch. So I bought that. It was a terrible Borger. It was the worst decision I made when I first started out in Kendo, but I didn't know any better. It wasn't like it is now, where there's loads of information about. I just bought a Borger based on my budget that I had. And like I say, I thought that the closest stitching equaled better quality, which it absolutely doesn't. Ended up spending quite a lot of money on a piece of junk Borger that ended up like I replaced it after 2 years of wearing it, and for the amount I paid for it, that was a very, very bad investment. So like I say, don't worry about buying the ball goo when you first start. You don't wear it in the beginning. You should have at least 6 months after starting of sort of grace time before you be really needing to get into the ball goo. There's no rush to get in the ball goo. Yeah, even if your instructor after 3 months is saying, "Oh, you can wear the ball goo after 3 months," there's no rush. It won't do you any harm to do that extra 3 months. And do the full 6 months without wearing ball goo. In fact, it'll give you a better grounding for going into the ball goo. All right, so don't rush yourself into the ball goo. Save the money until you've got the money to buy a decent one that you're going to be happy with. It's going to protect you properly, and then you're not going to feel like you want to quit Kendo, or that you can't afford to do Kendo because you've got to buy another ball goo because you're not happy with the one that you've got. Okay, the reason I don't think you should get the second-hand one is because, again, the ball goo, it needs to fit you properly. You need to make sure that, again, you're going to have the same problem. You know, you're going to end up, you very rarely find decent quality ball goo for second hand, because the people that buy the decent quality ball goo tend to stick around. They tend not to kind of, just sell it off. And lots of people sell off their second-hand ball goo that's like, maybe even they received it and it's kind of already battered and not really, the padding inside it's gone and stuff like that. So you're gonna have problems with sizing. Obviously people can find deals, but if you want the best peace of mind, you want the best advice I've got for you as a professional working in the industry, then just save up your money. Get something like the V1 from KendoStar. Obviously that's my website, just to be clear. It's me that benefits if you buy that, right? I am being clear about that, but the V1, I did specifically design that for KendoStar to be the perfect first ball goo. It's around like the €400 mark if you're in Europe, in the sort of $400-500 area. It's in that category. I know it's a little bit more expensive than other cheap ball goos out there, or entry-level ball goos out there, but it is worth that extra bit of money, and you definitely will get more out of it, and a longer life out of it. Okay, so there we go. I hope that makes sense, but feel free to post more questions if you've got them. Right. Okay, I'm spending a long time over these. Let's pick up the pace. Hi Andy, have you ever seen any head injuries in Kendo, like a boxer or American football players getting their heads a lot? I don't think it's a very common thing in Kendo, since we often see a lot of old people practicing Kendo for many years. But what are your thoughts on that? Have you ever heard of it? Yeah, I think we had a rant on this a while ago. No, it's not something you see. The only injuries you see in Kendo tend to be from There was the incident at the Europeans a couple of years ago, where someone got pushed over, got injured very badly, and they probably will alter the rules because of that. Frankly, that sort of thing doesn't happen in Japan, because although they play very aggressively, it happens differently, and they don't use the strength in the same way as we tend to over here. So those sort of things can be a bit more dangerous in the West, from my experience, from what I've seen. I've never seen that sort of somebody getting wrenched over and that resulting in injury. People get pushed over, people get, tripped over even, especially in the police championships, but it doesn't happen with the same brute force that it does over here. And I think as well, a lot of them are a lot smaller. They don't have the same physical strength or leverage that some of the bigger guys over here in Europe or in the US or whatever in the West do. So that sort of thing is something that I have seen. It is rare still, though. It isn't something that happens very often. Again, that was at a very elite level tournament where there was an awful lot riding on it. It's not something that happens in the day-to-day sort of Kendo thing. The only other sort of injuries that you see is the most common injury, and it's not really an injury, but like the most common injuries, well, it is. The most common injuries you see in Japan are either injuries to the Achilles tendon, where they have problems with that, and that's always what that is 9 times out of 10 it's somebody that hasn't done Kendo in about 10 years, and someone they know has kind of pressured them to join their team for a shiai, and all of a sudden after 10 years of not doing any proper exercise, they're thrown into like a shiai, and they kind of think that they can still move the same way they did 10 years ago. They put too much sort of pressure on their own bodies, and something gives way, and it's nearly always the Achilles tendon. That's reasonably common. I've seen it a couple of times happen, but it's always with that same kind of background story. Dehydration is probably the biggest cause of problems in kendo. Again, especially in Japan, in the summer when it gets super, super hot, up to 40 degrees in the dojo, and people that, you know, especially some of the schools have been in trouble about it for not letting the students drink enough or take enough breaks and stuff like that. That does happen. But these sort of like repetitive head injuries, you know, like I can't remember, somebody commented about it last time about these injuries that like American football players have to their brain and stuff from the clashing together, but we don't have that in kendo. We shouldn't have that in kendo anyway. Yeah, we get struck with the shinai, but that's what the boger's for. If you're wearing a decent protective boger, then you know, you should be getting some sort of protection from that. It's not like a kind of jolting injury like I think they get in. I don't play American football. I did a bit of rugby when I was at school because I had to. But the kind of, you know, that kind of impact of them together, it's not, I believe it's not quite the same. So no, we don't see that in kendo. And like you say, there's a lot of old people practicing it, and they seem to be perfectly with it, shall we say, even into the 90s, and I've even seen a guy that was over 100 practicing kendo once. So yeah, I don't think it's something we have to worry about that much. If you are worried about it though, definitely recommend the Vanguard series from KendoStar. I've got to get it in there. Okay, next one. Hi, I was wondering what your opinions on oval grip shinai are. Basically, because I absolutely love them, and I feel as if I have much better hasuji, and my kendo become far quicker. I've heard that some people really don't like them and say you shouldn't use them because they break too easily and your kendo will get lazy, which I understand, but personally I think the benefits outweigh the negatives, and I'd really like to hear your opinions on the topic. Okay, oval grip shinai. You know, I'm not gonna push the sale that we've got on KendoStar and oval grip shinai. I've done enough of that now. And all right, okay, all right. Let's get to the question. I don't use oval grip shinai personally. I've never really got to liking them. I have had a couple, and I just never took to them. My wife actually tells me she prefers oval grip shinai. Her father's always used oval grip shinai. I know lots of teachers in Japan that use oval grip shinai. I've never heard anything to the case that they break more easily, and there's no reason why they should break more easily, certainly not due to the fact that they're oval grip. What I have heard is some people don't like them because it's harder to build what you call Franken shinai. You know, if you break a shinai and then use the parts to build another, it's obviously harder to do that because of the different shape of the slats at the handle. So obviously you do have that, but that's up to you really. You don't have to worry about that. It's not that I certainly wouldn't say they break easier, and I also don't think that it's correct to say that it's lazy to use them either. At the end of the day, they have the same shape, roughly the same shape handle as a real sword would. So I don't think it's correct to say it's lazy to use an oval grip shinai. Absolutely not. There's loads of very high graded, very well respected kendo practitioners that use oval grip shinai, or the octagonal shape oval grip as well. Really, really popular. Personally, I don't like it. Just because I've never got into it doesn't mean that they're bad or that you shouldn't use them, and I certainly don't think that they're lazy. They are very good at, especially like you say, for making sure that you've got the good hasuji. Hasuji being making sure that you're using the shinai and cutting in the right sort of, using the right cutting line. So if you're obviously if you're hitting the straight shomen, obviously this is the tsuru. Obviously this is a small shinai. This is my kid's shinai that she doesn't use anymore because she's too big. But the this is the tsuru. This represents the back of the blade. This is the jimbu. This is the side that you would cut with. So if you're hitting the straight men or kote, this should be the string should be directly on the top, and the jimbu should be directly on the bottom and the side that you're actually making the strike. But if you're making a diagonal strike, like to the left side of the men, or like if you're doing kirikaeshi, or if you're doing do, like this, then it has to be kind of diagonal in this way. And obviously that can be a little bit hard. Sometimes some people have the habit of, with a round grip, letting the shinai turn in their hands. This is often a symptom of too much grip in the right hand, and it twists around like this. So twist around slightly this way. This is very common, both in the West and in Japan, actually. Lots of people, kids in Japan do it a lot, actually. I was always shouting at the kids at our club about that, like, because especially when they get nervous, to kind of turn this way. So yeah, but it's absolutely not cheating at all. In fact, my oldest daughter, who's about to turn 11, she's just started using the oval grip shinai as well. She's just given them a try, and she seems to quite like them as well. And I certainly don't begrudge her it. So yeah, that's where I land on oval grip shinai. Next one. Okay, hi everyone. This one is from the Kendo Show Early Access group. It's a really great Facebook group. It's free to join, of course. I've said this loads in these videos. If this is the first time you're watching, there's a link in the description to click on and join the Early Access group. You can post your questions in there. Obviously, there's loads of people in there. It's really good. Obviously, it's free and everything. It's really good because not only do I see them there so I can talk about them in these rants, but because there's so many other people in there, and we've got some other really high-graded people in that group, actually, you'll get their opinions too, so you know, it becomes a bit of a discussion forum, which is really, really nice. So definitely get in the Kendo Show Early Access group. It's called the Kendo Show Early Access group because when I post instructional videos, which I will have more coming soon, I don't have any filmed yet. I have been rather busy, but that's why I'm filling the gaps with these rants. But when I do have some more instructional videos filmed, I do know people want me to make some kata videos. I have seen all of those comments saying +1 for kata and stuff like that. So when I do manage to get those up and get them out and sort of published, they actually go in the early access group before they go anywhere else, so you get to see them first if you're in that group. So if you get in that group, when I upload a new video, it will go there first. The instructional videos, that is, it will go there first a few days before it goes anywhere else. So yeah, you get early access to it. So that's why it's called the early access group. Right, next. It's late in the day, can you tell? Right, hi everyone. I have a couple of questions about training methods for Kendo. What do you think about using wrist or ankle weights during practice? I remember from other martial arts that similar methods are quite useful and felt faster and lighter after not using the extra weight anymore. I also found scientific proof such as Dragon Ball Z. Okay, so right, ankle weights, wrist weights, yeah, I mean, I've heard of people using that, definitely. It's a lot like using like a suburito or a suburi bokken, you know, like the thick, heavy, I've got one actually, but it's all the way over there. It's like a bokken or a bokuto that's a lot thicker and a lot heavier. Or we have like the furisen suburi shinai, which is like a short, fat shinai. It's heavier than a normal shinai. It's the same sort of concept, really, especially ankle weights. Wrist weights would be exactly the same sort of thing. There's such a thing called a Suburiko as well. We don't have them on the KendoStar website, but I can get them if you want them, which is like a big green blob, plastic blob that you actually fix to your shinai to add extra weight when you're doing suburi. And yeah, ankle weights, yeah, I've heard of people using those as well. So yeah, definitely I think it's something that's useful. Whether Dragon Ball Z is proof or not, I don't know. I've never watched it, so I wouldn't know. But I'm going to guess that there's some sort of reference in Dragon Ball Z to ankle weights. So yeah, definitely give them a try. Definitely. Okay, last one. Okay. Right, I like this question. Hi Andy, what did you think of the Mameshi 3's tournament on Saturday? I saw you talking to Yuriko-san, but I was too shy to come and say hi. You've spoken about how watching others practice Kendo is a great way to improve, and I agree with you. But when it comes to great Kendo events such as the World Championships, you've also said that the Kendoka competing there aren't there to set an example for us because it's their job to win. Are there particular tournaments you think produce good example Kendo, brackets proper technique over trying to win, or is it more important for us to use discretion and judgment when watching these matches and deciding if we want to emulate that Kendo? Okay, so first, the Mameshi 3's tournament is a big tournament in the UK. It's happened every year for years and years. I think it was was it the 30th anniversary this time? Anyway, it's a really it's a really well established tournament. I actually went to it at the weekend for the first time in like 11 or 12 years. Last time I was in it, like my daughter was a little baby, and my wife and I competed in a team. This year I didn't compete. I took my daughters, like I say, she's now almost 11. My younger daughter's 9, and they competed instead. And I just watched and enjoyed not competing for once. And I thought it was a great tournament. Loved it, as I do every year. Right, so about watching other practice. Okay, so yeah, watching other practice to improve. Mitorigeiko, it's super important. I really stressed that yesterday, didn't I? About how important it is to watch Kendo and get that sort of mental picture of what Kendo's supposed to look like. And then I also said that, and I did say about the World Championships, that the guys competing in there, their job is to win. It's not to entertain the crowd. It's not to set an example of what is good Kendo. And yeah, it's true. It is true. But to be honest, right, how am I going to say this in a non-controversial way? Generally, it takes good Kendo to win those shiai. Generally, right? Now, that doesn't mean that they don't bend the rules, or they don't sometimes bring in sporting elements and stuff like that. But those are also things you also have to consider, especially if you're a competitive player. Now, I wouldn't necessarily look at the World Championships, especially not the men's team final, as as a great example for Mitorigeiko. Although there are certain elements of it that I thought would be useful, but probably it can be quite difficult to judge between what's good, especially if you're not quite as experienced. Difficult to judge what's good to take away and what's not so good to take away. But definitely the All Japan Championships. The All Japan Championships is usually really, really good. It's got a totally different atmosphere to the World Championships, because the guys there are still fighting to win, of course, but they're not under the same sort of pressure as they are at the World Championships or even at the Police Championships. So I think the All Japan Championships is probably my best my best recommendation. Obviously, this is the 8th Dan Championships, right? The 8th Dan Championships is awesome as well. Of course it is, right? But at the same time, if you're like, I don't know how old you are, mate, but like, if you're like younger than 50 and like, like 1st, 2nd Dan, maybe even less than 5th Dan, right? You're not going to get a lot out of trying to emulate 8th dans. You're not going to get a lot out of it, all right? Not saying that you're going to be able to go and suddenly emulate Nishimura-san or something from the All Japan Championships, yeah. But what I'm saying is it's not necessarily talking... Obviously, you're not going to be able to just emulate what they're doing anyway. What we're talking about is building a mental picture of what Kendo should look like for you at that stage. And if, the guys in the 8th Dan Championships are absolutely amazing, inspirational kendoka, right? But even like, for me, I find it hard to... I watch those guys and there's only small elements of their shiai that I can really still, currently, at my current age and level of progression, that I can probably add to my own personal Kendo blueprint. I've talked about the concept of having a Kendo blueprint before, but what I mean by that is through Mitorigeiko, through your Kendo experiences, you should be building a blueprint of what your Kendo is supposed to look like, and then you have that in your head, mentally in your head all the time when you go to the dojo, and then you're working on actually constructing that blueprint. Now, like I say, so from the 8th Dan Championships, I wouldn't say there's nothing I can take from it, but it's much more limited in terms of what I take from the 8th Dan Championships to put onto my own personal blueprint. It doesn't mean there's nothing. There is plenty actually, but it's not in the same way as the All Japans, for example, where lots of the competitors are nearer to my age, they're nearer to my level of they're not nearer to my level of progression. Most of them are much more experienced than I am. But they're nearer to me than the guys in the 8th Dan Championships are. I'm at the point now in my life where that's starting to change. I'm sort of moving more towards that way. But if you're sort of earlier on in the progression, and particularly if you're a bit younger, then you definitely want to be looking at stuff like the All Japans, the Todoufuken Taikai, the Tozai Taiko, even like some of the university stuff, the high school stuff. Definitely look at it. Definitely look at it. People slag off high school kendo all the time. People are always like, you know, dissing on it, shall we say. High school kendo is such a mess. Kids kendo. You know, the good kids, they're not a mess. Like, their footwork is so sharp, it is so spot on, and that's why they can move so fast. I've been in practice with those kids, the kids at that level, and I'm telling you, those kids are not doing messy or scrappy kendo. They're not doing those kids are on point with what they're doing. That's why they're successful. The rubbish kids that don't do as well, they're the ones that tend to have the messy, scrappy kendo, and that's where it gets a bit. Of course, it's not the same as when they progress to university and then progress to adulthood. Police officers, All Japan level people, of course they have cleaner, sharper kendo than the high school kids do. But just, you know, don't write off those kids and the university kids as well. All right, just watch everything, and then using your judgment and deciding what you want to put onto your blueprint is also part of your own kendo journey. If that makes sense. It's hard, but at the same time, it's not something that someone can say, this is good, this is bad. You have to do the work yourself, and you have to make those decisions also. And then finally, the only thing I'd say on that is, like, next time you see me, man, just say hi. You don't have to be shy about it. I'm just like, I'm just a guy that does kendo, like you. Yeah, so just come and say hi if you see me at another tournament, which I'm sure you will. If you're doing kendo in the UK, I'm sure you'll definitely see me. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope some of those questions made sense. Not the questions are perfectly fine. It's the answers that I'm worried whether they made sense or not. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the answers. Leave me some more questions down below in the comments. You know what to do. If this is your first time watching, go back and watch all the other ones. There's loads of them now. Go back and watch them. Leave a question. Like, share, all the social stuff, you know. You know what to do by now. Do I need to say shop at KendoStar.com? I feel like I've already plugged it quite a lot this time. So yeah, I won't tell you to go and shop at KendoStar.com whilst the Black Friday sale is on and there's loads of really good deals. Yeah, I won't say that. I think I've used that joke before, haven't I? Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, folks. I'll see you all next time.